Am I good? All right, so it looks like we're good. Hey, everybody, my name is Joshua from Tiny House Basics Trailer Foundations. And back in 2014, my beautiful wife, who has a background in interior design, and myself with a background in metal fabrication, custom trailers, and came from the aeronautical industry, we decided to build a tiny house. And like many out there that can probably resonate with the high cost of living, we wanted to figure out a solution. So we built a tiny house. And at that time in 2014, 28 feet was the biggest tiny house you could possibly do. So that was the size we decided on. We were all set. We were going to build the trailer and build our tiny house. In the later part of 2014, with the help of many friends, we built our tiny house on a custom trailer that we designed. And we kind of had this, use this as kind of like a prototype. We had this idea that through this process of trying to figure out the trailer, we had a lot of challenges, and we figured that we probably weren't alone. And even with our background in metal fabrication and trailers, that I bet there was a lot of other people that wanted to do this journey themselves, but that were having trouble. So we founded Tiny House Basics Trailer Foundations in 2014. And since then, we still live in our tiny house. We're going on 9 years and still happily married. We celebrated our 12-year anniversary earlier this year. We build custom tiny house trailers for people all around the US. We have 4 locations around the US. We build about 400 to 450 trailers each year. And, you know, as you've probably seen through this conference and seeing all the beautiful pictures of beauty shots of tiny houses on Instagram and YouTube, Facebook, and all that stuff, everyone is different. And with that, everybody's needs that want to go into a tiny house, that want to live in a tiny house, everybody has different family sizes, different needs, different desires, different aesthetics. And so every trailer is going to be different based on those kind of design, circumstances for each client. And the trailer is the single most important thing of the build. It is your foundation. So once you get that right, you don't have to worry about anything else going through the course of your build. Once you build your tiny house, you can't change the trailer. So getting, your options that you would like to do on your trailer foundation, nailed down specific to your needs will really, add to the success of your build. Whether you're a DIY builder or you're working with a professional tiny house builder, or even like working with a builder, in your local area that has never dealt with tiny houses, our goal is to really simplify that process and really make it easier to go from the trailer foundation to your tiny house build. So everything we've done with the design of our trailers is really simplify that process. All of our trailers come with lifetime consulting. So, we're always here to guide a DIY professional builder or builder that is getting into tiny houses to have that successful build. So today we're going to talk about, as much as we possibly can fit in this time slot, about tiny house trailers, features that you can get, styles and impacts on the pros and cons of those different types of trailers to really make your build absolutely successful. Starting with the main trailer frame, we did this design that allows you to uniformly insulate the full width of the trailer deck. A lot of trailers when we came onto the market in 2014 and still do use flanges on the side of the trailer where your wall framing sits on. That is an exposed, uninsulated area around the trailer deck, which has led to a lot of mold issues over the years in colder climates due to that really, really thick flange that they have that is uninsulated. So our trailer deck design allows you to uniformly insulate just like you would on a regular house foundation. And then we have a lot of features to allow speeding up the building. So let's get right into it. There's 2 main trailer types. We have a bumper pull, and then we have a gooseneck. Most people are probably familiar with both. The bumper pull is that longer, flat trailer. It has the little triangle tongue at the very front, which connects to a hitch, which is usually on the bumper of the truck. So there it kind of gets its name. Your usable size of that trailer, for instance, if it's a 30-foot trailer deck, you have a 5-foot tongue on top of it. Total length is 35. But not many, we don't really care about the total length. We're really concerned about the living space in that. With a gooseneck style trailer, which is the other style, that has a gooseneck style deck or hitch that rises above the lower main deck that would normally be on a bumper pull. You have this hitch that connects to the truck. A lot of the weight rests right over the rear axles, so better weight distribution on that. With a gooseneck style trailer, you have an 8-foot by 8.5-foot wide deck on top of that gooseneck hitch, which is a very popular living area, which could be like a master bedroom. If you don't want to do a loft, it could be a living room. But, you know, master bedroom is really kind of taking the cake for how people lay out their designs for gooseneck trailers. So that is the two main style of trailers, bumper pull, gooseneck. And bumper pulls, we can build up to 44 feet long, which is a really, really big trailer. A gooseneck, we can actually add an 8-foot deck and hitch to that 44-foot length, and it'll be 52 feet long, which is a very, very big tiny house. So in that world, tiny is definitely subjective, but that is an awesome layout for a big family or even just a couple. I mean, we've been living in our 374 square foot, 28 by 8-foot wide tiny house for 9 years now, and that extra space would be much, much desired. So with those two different types of hitch styles out of the way, we can go to the style of deck. The traditional style deck, we're just going to call it a standard deck with standard axles. You'll have fenders, whether they're rounded. Those are things you need to build over. You always treat the fender like a window opening. You would run a header across it. A couple of the panelists earlier talked about difficulties with, you know, door placement and stuff like that when you're building over a fender. So that's a standard style deck. You have a 26-inch high deck height. Your fender is 10 inches above that. And so you have kind of this, you know, no zone. You can't build, you know, you can't usually do your, you know, doors flush up against it because you need some framing tie downs and stuff like that. The next style trailer deck, which is similar to that, looks exactly the same, but it's called drop axles. That lowers the deck 4 inches. So you have a 22-inch high deck height. You have your fenders, which stay the same height relative to the ground, but they're actually going to be 10 inches taller than the deck because they stay the same. Deck gets lower, 22-inch high deck height. Why would you do a drop axle? Well, a drop axle has a lot of benefits, especially you're getting that extra 4 inches in your loft. So you're getting that headroom at the peak of your loft. If you're not planning on doing any lofts, then, you know, you might not see the benefit of a drop axle unless you just really prefer that lower approach entry into the tiny house. So if you've ever slept in a tiny house loft before, you would absolutely know an extra 4 inches of headroom would be a big win. So that's kind of where the drop axles come in. Drop axles and standard axles, kind of the same, you know, just different. You know, you have a lower deck, same weight carrying capacity. So a 7,000 pound rated axle or 777, so you have 3 7,000 pound axles on a drop axle. It's going to hold the same amount of weight as a standard axle. Drop axles have been around for well over 100 years. Same strength, it's just a different type of option on how you want to do your trailer. The last option for deck style, which has gotten really, really popular, especially on our 10-foot wide tiny houses, which I am standing in our own personal 10-foot wide tiny house. This is 30 by 10. And it's also a deck over, which is that last style. So a deck over trailer is a totally flat deck. Wheels are underneath it. So you have that flat deck. You're not impeded by fenders. You can place your windows, your doors, any location you want. You know, I mean, that's why we did it on our style tiny house, because they have these like 9-foot accordion doors. This is the corner of the house right here. We have an 8-foot accordion door right there. Our fender would have not allowed us to do doors like this. So we did 8-foot tall doors. And most people are really transitioning to single level tiny houses. You know, back in the day, 2014, when we started, you know, 28 feet was like the largest tiny house you could do. You know, you did a loft. That was the thing. You were doing a loft. We did it. We still sleep in our loft. We have a queen bed in our loft. It's very comfortable, but you know, single level, a tiny house is very, very desirable. Most of the trailers we build now, when they're 10 feet wide or 12 feet wide, are those deck overs. So you have that single level living space. So that deck over style trailer, you can use that on a bumper pull style trailer. You can use it on a gooseneck style trailer. And you just don't have fenders to deal with. And it's just such a nice, practical layout. So those are the 3 decks under the 2 different categories of a bumper pull and a gooseneck style trailer. The next we're going to talk about trailer lengths. So trailers can go anywhere from 10 feet all the way up to 52 feet in length. That really depends on kind of maybe your family size, your desire, kind of the layout you have in mind, where you're going to park it. Traditionally like a 10 foot to like maybe 18 feet are going to be like a single person's size tiny house. You might have maybe a tiny little kitchenette. You might have a little bathroom. You probably have one sink. Some of the very earliest tiny houses that, some of the panelists that were here earlier, they started off with these 12 and 14 foot tiny houses. Then the next step up is really like in the 20 feet to 24. Those are still traditionally like single person or a couple tiny houses. Back 4 years ago, the 24-foot tiny house was probably like the most popular one we saw. That was all over the place. So you're probably very familiar with that size. A lot of people didn't think you can go bigger than that. And then the 28-foot triple axle, which became even more popular. But now, since I would say around 2017, 2018, with the popularity of 10-foot wide trailers, we've really been pushing that size of, space. Because when somebody is building a tiny house, it is a lot of work. Whether you are doing it yourself, you're having it professionally built, you're kind of doing a mix of building partially yourself, acting as a general contractor, having, different, contractors handle certain tasks. But going through this project, this is like a total change of your living circumstances. You don't want to just do this for like 2 years, live in a very, very small tiny house and, and then sell it and move on or do something bigger. So this is when I like to encourage people to be practical with your own needs. We all have different needs. We have different tastes. And that's the beauty of like tiny houses and the beauty of DIY tiny houses, because that's when we get to see people's like personalities be reflected in their builds. So be practical with the size that you would like to go with. But I'm just here to kind of help you, give you some guidelines to really take out a lot of the, overwhelming factor with choosing what size tiny house you want to do. So really for the past several years, 30 feet and larger have been some of our biggest, most popular tiny house trailers we build. 36 has been popular for couples with, maybe just a couple with 2 people or with little ones. And then we've even done 48-foot by 10-foot wide trailers for families of 6. So, everybody uses space differently. Somebody can, work totally fine at 18-foot. Somebody's going to need, 40 feet by 10. So that's just something to think about, is like, what is the most practical layout for what your desire, what your plans are, your budget, your needs, and so forth like that. When it comes to choosing a trailer, we take out all the guesswork. You kind of just let us know what length you're wanting to do, what width you're planning on doing, and then we'll spec out the proper design for, weight distribution and capacity to be able to handle that size trailer. Next up, we would talk about widths. So most commonly, in the very beginning, tiny houses were always like, 8.5 feet or narrower. That was basically a car hauler trailer. They would choose a car hauler trailer, or even most car hauler trailers are around 82 inches wide. So Tumbleweed, for instance, would frame inside the wheel wells. The houses were very, very narrow. So if you go up to 8.5 feet wide, you don't have to have permits. You can move all over the place. This is great for people that did travel in the early days with their tiny house, like Alexis and Christian. You could easily move your tiny house, not have to worry about permits. But the reality is, as time is going on, people are realizing that they are not going to move these big things that often. They're more permanently temporary. When we built our tiny house in 2014, we moved it from our build site to the place we lived on with 30 acres of land in the East Bay of San Francisco. We lived there for almost 8 years, never moved. When we moved last year, we were saving up for a long time. We were able to purchase 3 acres of property in wine country. We moved our tiny house, the second time it's ever been moved, up to our property. And although, we did not plan on traveling with the trailer or the tiny house that often, it's important to make sure that it was built to handle regular travel. So we always design and build our trailers that they can be regularly traveled with. But the reality is, not many people are moving with their tiny houses that often. So back then we did stick with the 8.5 feet wide, because honestly, we didn't know there was another choice. So around 2016, we're able to secure 10 feet wide axles. So we started building 10 feet wide trailers. This was like such a game changer, because you just get so much more interior space. in your tiny house. It's definitely more practical for longer term living. It's might not be the, the right, decision for everybody, but the popularity is that we build roughly around 85% of all tiny house trailers we build each year are 10 feet wide and larger. It allows so much more flexibility and a practical floor plan. I mean, this house that we're in right here, which is our new addition, it's our baby, our first one it's our pancake. Our first one is our first pancake. Sometimes those, you're trying your best. But our second tiny house is an annex to our original. And so we did 10 feet wide by 30 feet on a deck over, single level floor plan. We got these corner windows. Our needs change. We would have, if you asked us in 2014, if we thought that we would still be in our tiny house, like, in 2023, like, no, we would have never guessed that. But when you modify this life to really kind of be, a tiny house can really adapt to your needs. You can really change most things about the interior. We've done kitchen remodels. We've changed a lot of different stuff. And we love this life. I mean, granted, it's a very small space, our original one of 375 square feet. We love it. But, we do have our annoyances about some things about our smaller tiny house. But, you're going to have that with any type of living space. So I think this is really like the best time, to think about your planning for your tiny house build is what is a practical size for you to make this, practical for a long-term, living. So, so that was a little bit on, and then I missed about the width. So standard's 8.5 feet wide. If you do 10 feet wide, when you're transporting it, tiny houses are not fun at all to move, no matter the width. So I always recommend hiring a transporter. You could always, shoot us an email. I can give you estimates, if you're trying to weigh the cost. Generally, like when you're looking at a 10-foot wide tiny house over 8.5 foot wide, if you're hiring a professional transporter, you're generally going to run around $300 to $450 more for the trip when you're moving the 10-foot wide tiny house. But the great thing about a 10-foot wide tiny house is you're not moving it often. You're going to enjoy all this extra space, more practical floor plan. It's going to feel very, very spacious. This house feels very, very spacious compared to our other one. And, when you're moving it, you can just hire a professional. You don't have to worry about, purchasing a large, expensive truck that you don't need. You can hire a professional shipper to move the tiny house. And then on top of the extra wide one, we have 12 feet wide tiny house trailers, which have been super, super popular, especially as the deck over, because people are not wanting to build around those fenders. We're generally doing 4 axles on such a large trailer. So when you do a deck over on a 12-foot wide, you really can maximize that square footage and that space, because these tiny houses are really going to be kind of, permanently temporary, not move that much. So it is imperative to really think about your needs and what size makes the most practical sense for you to make this jump. We all have different definitions of small or different definitions of, space planning or organizing and stuff like that. So it's being really practical with what you need can really help you in this beginning stages of the journey. And, that's really what we're trying to do is empower people to build the tiny houses themselves, or, empower them to, find a great builder or have a local contractor, of really simplifying that process. We've been around since 2014, really trying to help people make it easier than the journey that we, ourselves embarked on. So next after that, I'd like to talk a little bit about options to make it easier when you're building. Flush cross members is one of the most popular options on our trailers. That is when you get the trailer, you have these lateral, cross members, these joist of the trailer. When you choose those to have flush with the trailer, you can use the trailer as the subfloor, insulate inside. You don't have to worried about building a wooden subfloor, drop it in there, that extra 450 pounds, which would be on a 24-foot trailer, all that extra work. The trailer is designed to really get started right away. Another popular option, as I mentioned earlier, was the drop axles to gain interior height. If you're planning on doing lofts, that's really a great thing to consider. The drop axles. Threaded rods is also another feature we offer on our trailers. That is a perimeter rod, 10 inches before and after the fenders, 10 inches from each corner, 4 feet in the field. That allows you to tie your wall framing directly to the trailer. Any builder is going to know exactly how to address these. And it really helps out a DIYer or a professional builder of really just getting that house framed up and getting done with the foundation up to your main, the fun part, the framing and the build out of the house to build out that shell. Steel flashing is another option that people will get to allow you to just get started quicker. Underneath the trailer, you lay the insulation directly into the trailer belly, and then you can lay the plywood subfloor and get going from there. Custom bump outs has been another popular option. We did that on this tiny house. We did a custom bump out. This is a bumper pull trailer. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but we did a custom bump out that was about 5 feet wide, 2.5 feet deep on the tongue. This is part of our bathroom. It gave us an extra 8 square feet on the inside that we're using for a washing machine and storage and stuff like that. So custom bump outs has been a really great thing to kind of, it also kind of architecturally changes the way the tiny house looks, give it a little more character on the front end instead of this, you know, sometimes it could be a big box. You're working with a big box. So yeah, so that's a couple little features. You know, when you're planning your build, you know, whether you're thinking about doing steel framing or wood, you know, primarily we spec out the trailer to handle any capacity, although that, you know, wood framing is still the king. It is the easiest to build with, easiest to modify, easiest to get, easiest to change, you know. And if you ever did a steel frame, you know, tiny house, doing the interior is the worst. You just have to cover up. You can't use nails. You got to use screws on everything. There's a lot of, you know, holes to fill in. But, you know, the trailer can handle any of those weight capacities. It doesn't matter if you're using wood or steel. We're going to spec it out appropriately based on your building style. So I hope this was helpful. You know, if you guys have any questions at all, send us an email at trailers@tinyhousebasics. You can call us or text us at 925-322-0541. And yeah, this was just a quick little overview on tiny house trailers, and I'd love to talk to you more about it. So feel free to reach out anytime, and I'd love to chat. Oh, weight calculations is another thing that I forgot to add in there. So when you're thinking about, if you're just trying to determine the size or the weight of the finished tiny house, I kind of have a formula that I found that has been helpful. I kind of have a running tally through all the builds that we've done for customers or customers have done in getting final weights and kind of running these numbers. So the calculation, if you're looking to see how much a finished tiny house weighs, so you would take like, you know, if it's an 8.5 foot wide trailer, you can use the average of around 500 to 550 pounds per linear foot of trailer deck. So that calculation is helpful when you're trying to decide on the capacity that you need for your trailer. So always use that number, 500 to 550. That is a high estimation. Most tiny houses are well under a couple thousand pounds under that. But if you use that when you're trying to calculate what capacity trailer, that will really pinpoint you to a good, you know, weight carrying capacity. If you're thinking about doing a 10-foot wide or a 12-foot wide, there's a different calculation that I'd recommend. Is you take your square footage. So say it is a 40-foot by 10-foot wide tiny house trailer. You times that by 52 to 55 pounds per square foot of buildable trailer deck. That is a good calculation to help you estimate on how heavy this tiny house is going to be. And like I said, this is a really high estimation. You know, we estimated our 28-foot tiny house to be around 16,000 pounds when we built it, and it ended up being under 12,000 pounds. You know, so a lot of the materials they're using, I mean, we even have marble countertops in our tiny house, and it still came in under, you know, under that 12,000 mark. So looks like I'm just about out of time. Feel free to email me with any questions at all. We're really happy to help you, guide you on this journey, but you can email us at trailers@tinyhousebasics.com. You can call or email or call or text us at 925-322-0541. And please check out our website, tinyhousebasics.com. There's a lot of resources to really help you make your build successful. And all of our videos too are on YouTube. Our handle is at tinyhousebasics. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful, and have a great day.